So we're going to be doing something a little bit different today, and we're going to take a look at restoring this axe that I have. Or perhaps you could say it's more of a tomahawk, but whatever. So basically the paint on this thing is beat up and it's loose, the head is loose, so we're going to fix it up. First thing we're going to need to do is remove the head by removing this little screw. This head is press fit up from the bottom. This screw just keeps it from sliding back down. Once that's off, we can just slide it off the shaft. Like so. Now that the head is off, we can get to work stripping the paint off of it. So I just got some of this gooey paint stripper stuff from my local hardware store, and I just followed the instructions that said to brush it on and then wait for the paint to bubble up. Now I am wearing gloves, and you should do this in a ventilated area because this stuff is pretty nasty. It actually started to eat away at these plastic gloves that I'm wearing. So I would actually recommend not using this stuff unless you actually have to. Maybe start with acetone. If it's a water-based paint, acetone will work fine to strip off the paint. Now that the paint is bubbled up, I can start scraping it off with a plastic scraper like the instructions say. It worked to get most of the paint off, but we can take the rest off in a later step. So I washed off all the nasty paint remover, so now let's move on to restoring the shaft of this axe. So I'm just using an 80 grit sandpaper wheel on a rotary tool to clean up any imperfections. You can just do this with hand sandpaper, but it goes a little faster with the rotary tool. Next, I'm going to hand sand the rest of the shaft. Depending on how rough it is, you may want to start at a lower grit sandpaper and then work your way up to a higher grit sandpaper. I didn't have any lower grit sandpaper, and this shaft wasn't in that bad of condition, so I just hit it with the lowest grit sandpaper I had, which was 220. This worked fine to get out all the small imperfections and prepare the shaft to get refinished. Once you're done sanding, you can hit it with the finish of your choice. I'm just using an oil-based finish that soaks into the wood and leaves a nice natural look, rather than the plasticky, shiny look of a lot of varnishes. Which is good because those can also be slick, and this is a handle and I don't want to have this slip out when I'm chopping things. Once we're done applying finish to the handle, we can move on to the axe head that should be dry by now. It's still going to have some paint and rust spots on it that we need to clean up. Once again, I'm using my rotary tool. You can do this by hand, but rotary tool once again makes it a lot easier. I'm using a more aggressive 80 grit sandpaper wheel just to clean off any leftover paint and any rust spots. A wire brush would also be effective at getting off this paint and rust. Or once again, hand sandpaper. But I have the rotary tool, so I'm going to use it. After all the paint and rust is off, I'm going to switch to the smaller sandpaper wheel, just so I can clean up inside the axe head here, as well as give everything a once over. Once I'm done that, I'm just going to hit it with some finer sandpaper, just to help clean it up and get all the scratches in the same direction. Next, I'm going to hit it with some actual metal polish. The instructions say to just put a little on a cloth and work it into the metal until a black residue forms. I thought about repainting this, but I decided to just leave it as bare metal. So I want it to look shiny and clean. Now that it looks good, it's time to fix up this dinged up edge and get this thing nice and sharp. I forgot to film it, but I did take a belt sander to the edge of the blade here, just to sharpen it and clean up the nicks you see. Now that the handle and head are both complete, it's time to reassemble the axe. So what I did here is I just slipped a length of leather cord under either side of the axe head before I reattached it to the shaft. This added padding and friction on either side so that it's less wobbly and not going to slide back down the handle once it's press fit honor. I then tied the rest of the length of cord around the axe head to make it look nice and secure. Now my axe is fully restored. Thanks for watching, and consider subscribing if you want to see more videos.